At 9:17 on the morning of January 22nd, 1943, Lieutenant Sarah Catherine Morrison crouched in the ruins of a Japanese bunker west of Point Cruz, Guadalcanal, watching a banyan tree 240 yards away through a Lyman, Alaskan 2.5x scope that every officer in the 132nd Infantry Regiment had mocked for 6 weeks straight. 27 years old, 0 combat kills. Olympic silver medalist Berlin, 1936. Illinois state champion, 1939. 6-inch groups at 600 yards with iron sights. In the past 72 hours, 11 Japanese snipers operating in the Point Cruz groves had killed 14 Americans. Kat had one morning to stop them. With a rifle they called her mail-order toy, the Winchester Model 70. Bolt action, 5 rounds, 9 pounds base weight. The Lyman Alaskan scope added 12 ounces. 30.06 hunting ammunition, 180 grain soft-point bullets, compared to the M1 Garand semi-automatic 8 rounds. 5 pounds, no magnification that every other soldier in the battalion carried. Kat's rifle was a relic from another era. But it had one advantage. At 240 yards, Kat could see the whites of a sniper's eyes. The Garand shooters were firing blind. The jungle was never silent. Birds, tropical species Kat couldn't name. Insects, constant buzz that rose and fell in waves. Distant artillery. American 105mm howitzers firing on Japanese positions near Cape Esperance. Kat had learned over 3 months on Guadalcanal to filter out the noise and focus on movement that didn't belong. At 9:17, she saw it. A branch moved, 87 feet up in a banyan tree 240 yards away. No wind. The morning air was dead still, heavy with moisture. Just a small shift, a change in the pattern. Kat froze, kept her crosshairs on the spot. Her breathing slowed, competition training taking over. Calm, methodical, her heart rate 62 beats per minute, elevated from normal but manageable. Competition shooting had taught her that anything under 70 was operational. The branch moved again. Then she saw him. Dark clothing, not the khaki of standard Japanese army uniforms, but the mottled green-brown of a sniper's camouflage smock. Positioned in a fork where 3 branches met, the Japanese sniper was facing east, watching the trail where the 132nd Infantry had been moving supplies since dawn. Kat made her calculations. Range 240 yards. She'd paced off the distance from the bunker to that tree line the previous afternoon. Elevation target 87 feet up. Kat at ground level, or approximately 10 degrees upward angle. Wind none detected, no leaf movement, no grass sway, no feeling on her face. Temperature 78 degrees Fahrenheit. Humidity high. Guadalcanal was essentially a swamp with mountains. She adjusted her scope. The Lyman Alaskan had target knobs. Each click was 1/4 minute of angle. At 240 yards, that meant each click moved the point of impact 0.6 inches. No wind adjustment needed, but the upward angle required compensation. Bullet drop would be less shooting upward than shooting level. Kat clicked her elevation knob down 2 clicks. The Winchester's trigger was glass smooth. 3.5 pounds of pull weight. Kat had spent hours adjusting it at Camp Perry in Ohio before the war, using a trigger pull gauge to get it perfect. Too light and the rifle would fire accidentally from bumps or jarring. Too heavy and she'd pull her shots off target trying to break it. She settled the crosshairs on the sniper's upper chest. Center mass, not a headshot. At 240 yards with 2.5x magnification, a head was only about 3 inches in her scope. Too small. Too much room for error. The chest offered a target area roughly 12 inches wide, 4 times the margin. Kat began her trigger squeeze. Slow, steady pressure. The rifle would surprise her when it fired. That was the mark of a good trigger pull. No jerking, no anticipation, no flinching before the shot broke. The Winchester kicked into her shoulder. The recoil was sharp but manageable, about 20 foot-pounds of energy. The sound cracked through the jungle, sharper than a Garand's bark, more authoritative. Through the scope, Kat saw the impact. The Japanese sniper jerked. His body tumbled forward, then fell. 87 feet down through the branches, hitting limbs on the way down. The sound of his body hitting the jungle floor reached Kat 2 seconds after the shot, a distant heavy thump that felt more than heard. Kat worked the bolt. The motion was smooth from thousands of repetitions in practice. The spent .30-06 cartridge ejected brass glinting in the morning sun as it tumbled out. She chambered another round from the internal magazine. 4 rounds remaining. She kept her scope on the tree, waited for movement. Japanese snipers worked in pairs. One shooter, one spotter. If she just killed the shooter, the spotter was somewhere close, watching, waiting to see who had fired, trying to locate the source of that shot. Kat remained motionless. At 240 yards against the dark background of the bunker ruins, she was invisible to the naked eye. But if she moved, if she shifted position, if she fired again from the same spot, the spotter would see her muzzle flash and know exactly where she was. She waited, counted seconds, controlled her breathing. At 9:43, 26 minutes after the first kill, Kat found the spotter descending a tree 60 yards north. The Japanese soldier moved fast, branches shaking as he dropped from limb to limb, prioritizing speed over stealth. A mistake. Kat let his movement put the crosshairs 3 feet ahead, waited, fired. The Winchester kicked. The sniper fell backwards, arms flailing. His Arisaka Type 97 rifle clattered through branches ahead of him. Both hit the jungle floor within seconds. 2 shots. 2 kills. The bolt cycled smoothly. 3 rounds remaining. She pulled a stripper clip from her ammunition pouch. 5 rounds of .30-06 held together by a thin metal clip. She pressed down on the top round with her thumb, stripping all 5 cartridges down into the Winchester's internal magazine in one smooth motion. The stripper clip she tossed aside, it would just make noise rattling in her pouch. Her hands were steady, breathing controlled, heart rate 65 beats per minute, still operational. This was no different than Camp Perry, except the targets shot back. 6 months earlier, Kat had stood in a different kind of heat, Camp Forest, Tennessee, September 1942. The air thick with humidity and the sound of men preparing for war. Sarah Catherine Morrison, they called her Kat, for how silently she moved through competition. Shooting ranges had saved 2 years of Army Nurse Corps pay, $127.50. The Winchester Model 70 with Lyman Alaskan scope and Griffin and Howe mount had cost exactly that amount. Shipped from the factory in New Haven, Connecticut to Camp Forest in a wooden crate marked fragile. The civilian armorer at Camp Forest held the rifle like it was a snake. Thomas Wilson, age 53, 20 years as a sporting goods dealer, before the war made him valuable to the military. He studied the Winchester with obvious confusion. "Ma'am, you planning to hunt deer or Japs?" Kat's answer was immediate. "Both shoot back about the same." Wilson didn't laugh. He handed the rifle back. "You know this isn't standard issue." "I'm aware. Captain Morris won't like it." Captain Morris doesn't have to like it. But Captain Morris did have an opinion. Thomas Morris, her commanding officer, age 43, West Point class of 1921. He found Kat at the rifle range that afternoon, sighting in the Winchester at 100 yards. 3 shots, 1-inch group. She was adjusting the scope when Morris approached. "Morrison, what is that?" Kat stood, saluted. "Winchester Model 70, sir, boy, .30-06 caliber, Lyman Alaskan scope." "I can see what it is. What are you doing with it?" "Preparing it for combat, sir." Morris's face reddened. "Morrison, this is a combat zone we're deploying to. Not a turkey shoot, not a competition range. Combat. That is a civilian sporting rifle." "Yes, sir, a civilian sporting rifle with a scope that provides 2.5x magnification. The M1 Garand has no magnification." "The M1 Garand is semi-automatic, 8 rounds. Your toy there is bolt action, 5 rounds." "The M1 Garand's effective range is 500 yards. This Winchester is accurate beyond 1,000 yards with the scope." "Sir." Morris stepped closer, lowered his voice. "Morrison, I don't care if you can shoot the wings off a fly at 1,000 yards. You're a nurse. Your job is to save lives, not take them. Leave the toy in your tent. That's an order." Kat said nothing, just held his gaze. Morris turned and walked away. Over his shoulder, "And that's final." Word spread through the regiment that night. The nurse with the mail-order rifle. Officers placed bets. Most gave her a week before she abandoned it for standard equipment. A few gave her less. Kat heard the whispers, ignored them. She'd heard skepticism before at the Olympics, when she competed against men at state championships, when officials questioned whether women should be allowed. Skepticism meant nothing. Performance meant everything. The Winchester never made it to the ship. The 132nd Infantry Regiment shipped out from Camp Forrest on October 3, 1942. Destination Guadalcanal, Solomon Islands, South Pacific. The regiment boarded transport ships in Charleston, South Carolina. 3,000 men. Their equipment, their weapons. Cat's Winchester Model 70 sat in a warehouse in Illinois. The crate had been delayed. Paperwork error. By the time it arrived at Camp Forrest on October 1st, the regiment was already gone. Cat requested it be forwarded through military mail. The supply officer said he'd try. Cat knew that meant no. The voyage to Guadalcanal took 6 weeks. 6 weeks of Cat watching other soldiers clean their garands, disassemble and reassemble them, practice their manual of arms. 6 weeks of Cat treating seasickness, sunburn, and the minor injuries that come from packing 3,000 men onto ships built for half that number. 6 weeks of Cat wondering if she'd ever see her Winchester again. The 152nd Infantry arrived at Guadalcanal in late November 1942. They relieved the Marines who'd been fighting since August. The Marines had taken Henderson Field, the critical airstrip in the center of the island. They'd held it against Japanese counterattacks, but they hadn't taken Mount Austin, and they hadn't cleared the Japanese from the coastal groves west of the Matanika River. That became the 132nd's job. Mount Austin stood 514 feet tall. The Japanese called it the Gifu. 500 men, 47 bunkers. The Japanese had fortified it over 4 months, turning it into a fortress. The 152nd attacked on December 17th. Cat spent 16 days treating casualties. 34 killed in action, 279 wounded. Cat learned to recognize the wounds different weapons made. The Arisaka Type 99 rifle, 7.7mm caliber, smaller entry wound than the Garand's 30-06. The Type 92 heavy machine gun, 7.7mm, but at 500 rounds per minute, one burst could saw a man in half. The Type 89 grenade discharger, Americans called it a knee mortar, though it was never fired from the knee-lobbed 50mm grenades that killed through fragmentation and concussion. Cat treated them all, held dying men's hands, wrote letters to families, learned that war was not what they taught at nursing school. The 132nd had 6 designated marksmen, all expert riflemen, all M1 Garands with iron sights. In 16 days, 0 confirmed counter-sniper kills. The Japanese snipers, elevated in banyan trees with scoped Arisaka Type 97s, picked them off methodically. Davis' first throat shot at 400 yards. Jackson's second headshot between positions. By January 2nd, when Mount Austin fell, 4 dead, 2 wounded. Cat treated them all, held Davis as he bled out, closed Jackson's eyes, learned that standard tactics weren't working. By January 2nd, 1943, when Mount Austin finally fell, 4 of the 6 designated marksmen were dead, 2 wounded. The battalion's counter-sniper capability was effectively 0. Cat watched them die, said nothing. But every night in her tent, she cleaned an imaginary rifle, went through the motions. Stock action, barrel scope, even though the Winchester was somewhere in a warehouse thousands of miles away. On December 23rd, a supply sergeant found Cat at the field hospital. He carried a wooden crate marked fragile. Lieutenant Morrison. Cat looked up from a wounded soldier's leg, shrapnel wounds already treated, just changing dressing. Yes. Package for you, ma'am. Came through military mail. Took a while. Cat's hands froze. What is it? The sergeant grinned. Feels like a rifle, ma'am. Heavy. You order something. Cat finished tying off the dressing. Washed her hands. Took the crate. Thank you, Sergeant. That night by candlelight, while artillery pounded Japanese positions 2 miles away, Cat unpacked her Winchester Model 70. The rifle was packed in cosmoline, a thick, waxy rust preventative that had to be completely removed before firing. She field stripped it. Bolt, chamber, barrel, scope, wiped everything down with gun oil, cleaned until every component gleamed. She assembled it, checked the scope mounts, adjusted the eye relief, the distance between her eye and the scope, loaded 5 rounds of 30-06 hunting ammunition she'd packed in Tennessee. The rifle felt right, like shaking hands with an old friend after a long absence. Captain Morris saw her carrying it 2 days later. The 132nd was moving west after taking Mount Austin. Kat was evacuating, wounded, her aid bag on her back, the Winchester slung over her shoulder. Morris stopped her. "Morrison, I told you to leave that toy behind." Kat didn't break stride. "Sir, my aid bag weighs 40 pounds. The rifle adds 10. I can carry both." "You're a nurse, not a rifleman." "Yes, sir, but the Japanese don't distinguish. If they attack the aid station, I'll need more than bandages." Morris started to object, then stopped. He'd lost 4 marksmen in 16 days. The Japanese snipers were killing his men faster than disease. Maybe having one more rifle, even a civilian one, wasn't the worst idea. "Fine, but you're not to engage unless the aid station is directly threatened." "Understood." "Understood, sir." Kat kept walking. The Winchester stayed on her shoulder. Point Cruz was different from Mount Austin. No bunkers, no fixed positions, just Japanese soldiers who'd retreated west from Henderson Field and dug into the massive trees. Some of those soldiers were snipers. They had scoped Arisaka Type 97 rifles. They knew the jungle. They knew how to wait. On January 19, 1943, a sniper killed Corporal Richard Davis while he was filling canteens at a creek. Single shot, 300 yards. Davis never saw the shooter, never heard the shot. Just collapsed water still running from the canteen he'd been holding. On January 20th, another sniper killed 2 men from L Company during a patrol. Both headshots. From trees the patrol had walked past twice. On January 21st, 3 more men died. One shot through the neck from 400 yards while eating breakfast, just sitting on a log spooning cold beans from a can. The bullet hit him mid-bite. He was dead before his squad mates realized what happened. 14 Americans dead in 72 hours. That night, Colonel William Drake summoned all officers. Battalion commander, age 52, veteran of the First World War. He'd seen men die, but not like this. Not picked off one by invisible shooters they couldn't locate, couldn't engage, couldn't stop. The officers gathered in what passed for battalion headquarters, a tent with a map table lit by kerosene lanterns. Colonel Drake looked at each of them. 14 men, 3 days. The Japanese have 11 snipers operating in the Point Cruz groves. Intelligence says 11 based on the attack patterns and locations. They're killing us faster than malaria. Our marksmen can't touch them. They're using scoped Arisaka Type 97s, 2.5x magnification, same principle as civilian hunting scopes. They know every tree in those groves. They climb before dawn, sit all day without moving, shoot when they have clear shots. Silence. Drake continued, "I need someone who can shoot, someone who can counter these snipers, someone who can climb into those trees or find them from the ground and eliminate the threat." Captain Morris spoke up. "Sir, we've lost 4 of our 6 designated marksmen. The 2 remaining are wounded. We don't have anyone with the training or equipment for this." Drake's voice was flat. "Then find someone. Because if we don't stop these snipers, we'll lose another 14 men in the next 3 days, and another 14 after that." Kat spoke. "Sir, I can make those shots." Every head turned. Lieutenant Sarah Catherine Morrison, age 27, Army Nurse Corps, Olympic silver medalist in rifle shooting, Berlin, 1936. Illinois state champion, 1939. The room went silent. Captain Morris found his voice first. "Morrison, you're a nurse." "I'm also a competitive shooter, sir. Illinois state champion at 1,000 yards. 6-inch groups at 600 yards with iron sights." Lieutenant Kowalski laughed. Not mean, just surprised. "Ma'am, with all respect, competitive shooting and combat are 2 different things." Kat turned to Mom. "Yes, competitive shooting is harder. The targets are smaller. The standards are tighter. Combat targets are larger. Combat standards are lower, just hit center mass. I've been shooting since I was 12 years old. Competed nationally since I was 16. I know how to read wind, adjust for elevation, compensate for temperature and humidity. And I have a rifle with 2.5x magnification, the Lyman Alaskan scope." Drake studied her. "The Winchester." "Yes, sir. Winchester Model 70. Bolt action 5 rounds, 9 pounds with scope. 30.06 caliber. Effective range beyond 1,000 yards with optics." Sergeant Drake, different from Colonel Drake, same last name, spoke up. "Lieutenant, you ever shot a man?" No. Ever shot at a man, Jean? No, but I've shot thousands of rounds at targets under pressure, competition pressure, where missing costs you medals, where every tenth of an inch matters. Combat shooting is the same mechanics, just different stakes. Morris objected. Sir, this is insane. Morrison is a nurse. Women don't. Drake held up his hand. Cut Morris off. Morrison dawn tomorrow. One chance. You kill one of those snipers, I'll give you a week to prove yourself. You miss your court-martialed for insubordination for disobeying Captain Morris's order to leave that rifle behind. Kat felt her stomach drop. Court-martial. Dishonorable discharge. Prison, possibly. But 14 men were dead. More would die tomorrow. Yes, sir, Dawn. Drake dismissed them. As the officers filed out, Kat heard the whispers, heard the bets being placed. 10 to 1 she'd miss. 20 to 1 she'd freeze up. 50 to 1 she'd actually kill a sniper. That night, Kat checked her rifle for the third time. Field stripped it. The Winchester had been packed in cosmoline for the ocean voyage. She'd cleaned it once when it arrived, cleaned it again 2 weeks later. Now she cleaned it a third time. Bolt removed, wiped down, oil applied, reassembled. Chamber cleaned with a bore brush, patches run through until they came out white. Barrel patches soaked in gun oil run through from breech to muzzle, never muzzle to breech that would wear the rifling. Scope mounts checked for tightness with a screwdriver. Eye relief adjusted so she could see a clear sight picture without strain. She loaded 5 rounds of 30.06 hunting ammunition. The bullets were 180 grain soft point, designed for deer hunting, not military use. But they'd work. Same cartridge as the Garand fired, just optimized for accuracy over military ball ammunition. Kat packed 60 additional rounds in stripper clips, filled her canteen, checked her watch, 2,300 hours. She tried to sleep. At 0300 she gave up. January 22nd, 1943, 05:30 hours. Kat moved into position. The ruins of a Japanese bunker the 132nd had captured 3 days earlier. The bunker overlooked the coconut groves west of Point Cruz. Intelligence said the Japanese snipers operated from the large banyan trees in that area, massive trees reaching 90 feet tall with trunks 8 feet thick. A sniper could climb one of those trees before dawn and sit motionless all day without being seen. The jungle canopy was so dense that from the ground you couldn't see anything above 50 feet. But from another tree or from an elevated position with a scope, you could see movement. Kat had brought no spotter, no radio man. Colonel Drake had refused to waste men on her. Just Kat, her rifle, her canteen, and 60 rounds of ammunition. She settled into the bunker. The position offered good cover, sandbags, concrete overhead protection, and it offered a clear view of the groves. Kat could see roughly 300 yards of tree line. She began glassing the trees through her scope. The Lyman Alaskan scope had a limited field of view. At 240 yards, Kat could see an area about 30 feet wide. That meant methodical scanning. She started at the tree line closest to American positions and worked outward, left to right, top to bottom. Each tree took 45 seconds to scan completely. The jungle was never silent. Birds, tropical species Kat couldn't name. Bright colors, harsh calls. Insects, constant buzz that rose and fell in waves punctuated by clicks and chirps. Distant artillery, American 105mm howitzers, firing on Japanese positions near Cape Esperance, 10 miles west. The sound rolled across the island like thunder. Kat had learned to filter out the noise, focus on movement that didn't belong, movement that was too deliberate, too controlled. At 9:17 she saw it. Now with 2 Japanese snipers dead and her position secure, Kat reloaded her Winchester and waited. The jungle had gone quiet. The birds had stopped calling. The insects had stopped buzzing. That was a bad sign. It meant something had disturbed them, something unnatural. Kat scanned the trees, left to right, top to bottom, looking for the third sniper, because there would be a third and a fourth, and however many it took until she stopped them or they stopped her. The morning was just beginning. At 11:21, 2 hours after Kat's first kill, a Japanese bullet struck the sandbag 6 inches from her head. The impact was instantaneous. No warning. Just the sudden explosion of canvas and sand sprang into her face, grit in her eyes, dirt in her mouth. The sharp crack of the shot reaching her a split second after the bullet. Kat rolled left, pure instinct. She pressed herself against the bunker wall, hard hammering. Her breathing came fast, ragged. She forced herself to slow it down. Inhale 4 seconds. Hold 2. Exhale 4. The shot had come from the southwest, different direction than the first 2 snipers. Different tree, different shooter. Kat counted to 60, gave her heart rate time to come down, gave the shooter time to make his next move, either fire again or relocate. At 60 seconds, she inched back toward her firing position. Move slow, 6 inches. Stop. Listen, 6 more inches. Stop. No shot came. At 11:24, Kat reached her firing position. She brought the Winchester up slowly, settled the stock against her shoulder, put her eye to the scope, glassed the trees to the southwest. The shooter would have moved it after taking that shot. Basic sniper doctrine that Kat had learned from reading military field manuals. Shoot and relocate. Don't fire twice from the same position. The first shot reveals your general area. The second shot pinpoints your exact location. But in jungle, this dense relocation options were limited. The trees were the only vantage points. You couldn't shoot effectively from the ground, too much vegetation blocking the sight lines. You had to be elevated. And once you'd climbed a tree, moving to another tree meant descending, crossing open ground, and climbing again. That took time, created noise, left you vulnerable. So most snipers repositioned within the same tree. Different branch, different angle, but same general location. Kat scanned the trees methodically. Started at the area she estimated the shot had come from, roughly southwest, roughly 200 yards, roughly 70 to 80 feet elevation, based on the downward angle of the bullet strike. At 11:38, Kat found him. Third tree from the left, 73 feet up. The Japanese sniper had repositioned after his shot 10 feet higher, 15 feet left. Same tree. His mistake. Through the scope, Kat could see enough. A dark shape against darker branches. He was still watching her bunker, unaware she'd spotted him or confident in his concealment. Kat adjusted. 200 yards, 1 click down from her previous 0. Slight breeze from the east, 1 click right. Crosshairs on center mass. She fired. The sniper jerked, then fell, 73 feet down through branches. The impact reached her as a distant thump. 3 kills in 2.5 hours, fresh round chambered. Kat kept scanning. The jungle remained silent. No movement, no shots. The third sniper's partner, if he had one, was either not present or too disciplined to reveal himself. Kat reloaded from a stripper clip, pressed 5 rounds down into the magazine. Her hands were steady now. The adrenaline spike from being shot at had faded. Her heart rate was back to 65 beats per minute. She settled into wait. By noon, Kat had killed 5 Japanese snipers. Word spread through the battalion. Men gathered at a safe distance behind Kat's bunker, maybe 80 yards back behind a tree line, watching, waiting for her next shot. Kat heard them muttering. Heard someone say, "That's Morrison, the nurse with the mail-order rifle." Kat turned her head, made eye contact with the nearest soldier, waved him away with her hand. "Get back." The soldiers didn't move. One of them, a private Kat didn't recognize, called out, "How many you got?" "Lieutenant?" Kat didn't answer. She turned back to her scope. Focused on the trees. Spectators drew attention. Tension drew fire. The Japanese were watching. They were learning. Every kill Kat made taught them something new about her capabilities, her position, her tactics. The Japanese snipers adapted after the 5th kill. They stopped moving during daylight. Kat spent the afternoon 1,200 to 1,600 hours glassing trees and seeing nothing. Not a branch shift, not a shadow move, not even birds disturbed by someone climbing. The snipers were either gone or they'd learned to stay motionless. At 1600, a runner arrived at Kat's bunker. Corporal Daniel Hayes, age 22, from Missouri. "Lieutenant Morrison, Captain Morris wants you back at battalion headquarters." Kat slung her Winchester, followed Hayes back through the coconut groves. Her legs were stiff from 4 hours of kneeling. Her eyes hurt from staring through the scope. Her shoulder was bruised from recoil, not bad, but noticeable. At battalion headquarters, Captain Morris was waiting. The mockery was gone from his voice. His expression was serious, professional. Morrison report. 5 kills, sir. 12 rounds fired total. 7 misses, 4 on moving targets at ranges beyond 250 yards. 3 rounds used for testing windage and elevation adjustments. Morris studied her. 5 confirmed kills. Yes, sir, I observed all 5 bodies fall and hit the ground. No wounded escapes. Range of engagements. Between 190 yards and 270 yards. All elevated targets between 50 and 87 feet. Morris made notes. Ammunition remaining. 48 rounds, sir. The rifle. Cat hesitated. Then functional. Bore is heating up from sustained fire. I'll need to clean it tonight. Morris nodded. Good work, Morrison. Be back in position at dawn tomorrow. Intelligence still says 11 snipers total. You've eliminated 5, 6 remaining. Understood, sir. Cat returned to her tent. Field stripped her Winchester. Spent an hour cleaning it. Ran patches through the barrel until they came out white. The bore was warm to the touch, not dangerously hot, but warm enough that she'd need to let it cool overnight. High-volume shooting generated heat. Heat affected accuracy. A hot barrel could expand slightly, changing the point of impact. She cleaned the bolt, checked the firing pin, examined the extractor, the small claw that grabbed the spent cartridge and pulled it out. Everything looked good. The Winchester was holding up. Cat reassembled the rifle, loaded 5 fresh rounds, set it beside her cot and tried to sleep. She woke at R100, then O230, then O300, finally gave up at O400. January 23rd began with rain. Heavy tropical rain that pounded the canvas tent, turning the jungle floor outside into mud. Cat packed her gear in the dark. Winchester ammunition, canteen, a small tarp to keep the scope dry. She moved to her bunker at 0530. The rain was still falling. Visibility was 0 beyond 100 yards. Cat sat with her back against the sandbags and waited. The rain stopped at 0:15. By 0845, visibility had improved enough to begin work. Cat glassed the trees through her scope. Water dripped from every leaf, every branch. The jungle looked like it had been painted with a glaze. Everything glistened. At 0912, Cat found him. The sniper had climbed during the rain, smart using the sound for cover. 290 yards out, longer range than yesterday. He'd learned Cat's effective distance and positioned himself beyond it. Also smart, but not smart enough. Cat adjusted for the extended range. 3 clicks up on elevation. No wind after the rain. Crosshairs settled on the dark shape 82 feet up. The Winchester barked. The sniper tumbled down through the canopy. 6th kill. She reloaded from a stripper clip as the mortar rounds began their whistle. At 0957, she heard them incoming. Mortar rounds. The whistle of projectiles arcing through the air. High-pitched, getting louder. Cat looked up, tried to locate the source. Then the first salvo hit. Crump, crump, crump. 3 explosions 40 yards short of her bunker. Geysers of dirt and smoke. Shrapnel whining overhead. Type 89 grenade dischargers. 50-millimeter projectiles. The Japanese called them knee mortars, though firing them from the knee would break your femur. They were indirect fire weapons. You set them at an angle, drop the grenade down the tube, let the firing pin at the bottom ignite the propellant. Effective range about 700 yards. Rate of fire roughly 20 rounds per minute with a trained crew. The second salvo hit at 0958. 20 yards short. Closer. Cat realized they'd triangulated her position, from muzzle flash or sound or both. The first salvo had been range finding. The second salvo had corrected. The third salvo would hit her bunker. She grabbed her Winchester, slung it over her shoulder, grabbed her ammunition pouches, left everything else, sprinted north along the tree line. 40 yards. Her boots pounded mud. Branches whipped her face. She dove into a shell crater just as the third mortar salvo hit. The bunker she'd occupied for 2 days disappeared. The explosions were deafening. Shock waves rolled over Cat's position. Dirt and debris rained down. Shrapnel whined overhead, supersonic fragments of steel casing that could cut a man in half. Cat pressed herself into the bottom of the crater, covered her head with her arms, waited for it to stop. After 10 seconds, the explosion ceased. The ringing in Cat's ears continued. She waited another 30 seconds, then slowly raised her head. The bunker was gone, just a crater where it had been. Sandbags blown apart, concrete shattered. If she'd stayed, she'd be dead. Kat checked her rifle. Mud on the stock, but the action was clean. The scope intact, the barrel clear. She worked the bolt. It moved smoothly. The Winchester had survived. She settled back into the crater, checked her surroundings. This position offered less cover than the bunker, but it was lower profile, harder to spot, and the Japanese mortar crew wouldn't know she'd moved. Kat wiped mud off her scope lenses, took a drink from her canteen. Her hands shook slightly. Adrenaline, fear, the realization that she'd almost died. She forced herself into the breathing rhythm. Slow inhale, controlled exhale, heart rate dropping. The dynamic had changed. This was no longer target shooting. The Japanese weren't just defending, they were hunting her. Kat relocated again, not the crater too exposed once the Japanese realized they'd missed. She moved to a fallen tree 120 yards north of the destroyed bunker. The tree was massive, a banyan brought down by artillery weeks earlier. The trunk was 8 feet thick. It provided excellent cover and a clear view of the groves. Kat settled in behind the trunk, rested the Winchester on the wood, glassed the trees. The Japanese sent more snipers that afternoon. They knew Kat was hunting them. They were hunting her back. At 14:23, Kat engaged her seventh target, 315 yards, the longest shot yet. The sniper had positioned himself in a palm tree elevated 82 feet. He'd learned to increase distance. Smart. But distance worked both ways. Kat made her calculations. 4 clicks up for bullet drop. The wind had picked up 5 miles per hour crosswind from the east. 2 clicks right. She settled into position, controlled her breathing. The crosshairs drifted slightly in the wind. She waited for the lull, waited. There, the Winchester fired. Through the scope, Kat watched the bullets trace. 315 yards takes time, nearly half a second of flight. She saw the sniper jerk, then tumble from the palm tree arms windmilling. 7 seconds to hit the ground. Kat reloaded. Her shoulder was bruised from recoil now. 7 shots in 2 days. The Winchester's stock was beginning to show wear. At 15:30, the sun angle changed. Afternoon light came in from the west at a lower angle. Kat had been scanning the same trees for an hour, seeing nothing. Then the new light revealed what darkness had hidden. A silhouette, 94 feet up in a banyan, backlit against the sky. The sniper had chosen perfect concealment in the dense canopy. Would have remained invisible in morning light. But afternoon betrayed him. 270 yards. Kat adjusted, fired. The 8th sniper fell tumbling through branches. Kat's hands were steady, her breathing controlled. But something had changed. The first kill had felt like competition. The 8th kill felt like work. Necessary work. But work nonetheless. She'd become what the Army needed, a killer of men. At 1700, Captain Morris sent a runner. Corporal Hayes again. Lieutenant Captain wants you back. Kat returned to battalion headquarters. Morris was there with Colonel Drake. Drake looked tired. He'd lost men today, not to snipers, but to other causes, disease, accidents, the grinding attrition of jungle warfare. But no sniper casualties. Not today. Drake spoke first. Morrison, report. 8 confirmed kills over 2 days, sir. 20 rounds fired against snipers. 8 hits, 12 misses. Most misses were on moving targets at ranges beyond 300 yards. Drake nodded. The Japanese mortared your position this morning. Yes, sir. Type 89 grenade dischargers. They triangulated my location from previous shots. I relocated before the 3rd salvo hit. Good thinking. You're alive because you moved. Yes, sir. Morris spoke up. Intelligence says 11 snipers originally. You've killed 8, 3 remaining. Kat nodded. Those 3 will be the best, sir. They've survived 2 days while watching their comrades die. They know my tactics. They know my rifle. They know my capabilities. Drake leaned forward. Can you get them? Kat met his eyes. Yes, sir, but it'll be harder. They're learning faster than I can adapt. Drake stood. Then adapt faster. Same orders. Dawn tomorrow. Hunt them down. Yes, sir. Kat returned to her tent, cleaned her Winchester again. The barrel was fouled from 20 rounds. She ran patches through until they came out white, checked the bolt face, examined the firing pin. Everything functional. She loaded 5 fresh rounds, checked her ammunition supply. 40 rounds remaining. Enough for tomorrow. Probably. Kat tried to sleep, woke at 0300, gave up at 0400. January 24th, Kat's third day hunting Japanese snipers. At 0415, rain started again. Not as heavy as yesterday, but enough to delay dawn operations. Kat used the time to relocate, not the bunker that was destroyed, not the fallen tree the Japanese would expect her to return there. Somewhere new, somewhere they wouldn't anticipate. She chose a position 70 yards south of the fallen tree, a cluster of large rocks the Marines had used as a machine gun nest back in December. The position offered good cover. The rocks were volcanic, dense, heavy, capable of stopping rifle bullets, and it offered overlapping fields of fire into the groves. Kat settled in behind the rocks, waited for the rain to stop. At 0743, the rain slowed to a drizzle. Visibility improved. Kat began glassing trees. She'd killed 8 Japanese snipers. Intelligence said 11 originally. That left 3. But Kat's mathematics told her something was wrong. Japanese snipers worked in pairs, 1 shooter, 1 spotter. 11 was an odd number. Either one worked alone or there were 12. She kept that thought in the back of her mind as she scanned. At 08117, Kat found sniper number 9. Palm tree 190 yards out. Low only 40 feet up. Unusual. Most snipers climbed high for better sight lines, better fields of view, better angles of fire. This one had chosen concealment over elevation. The palm fronds created a natural hide. From ground level, he'd be invisible. But Kat was elevated on the rocks. The angle gave her a view down into the fronds. She could see the dark shape of the sniper's shoulders and head. Kat aimed, centered her crosshairs on what she estimated was his upper chest, range 190 yards. Minimal wind. She made her adjustments. 1 click down on elevation. No windage adjustment. Began her trigger squeeze. Stopped. Something was wrong. Kat lowered her rifle slightly, kept her eye to the scope but expanded her focus, looked at the whole picture, not just the target. The position was too obvious, too easy. Kat had been hunting snipers for 3 days. She'd killed 8 men, professional soldiers, trained marksmen. The remaining snipers wouldn't make elementary mistakes. They wouldn't position themselves where an elevated shooter could spot them. Not unless it was deliberate. Bait. Kat lowered her rifle completely, took her eye away from the scope, thought it through. If the sniper in the palm was bait, the real shooter would be positioned to cover him, watching for anyone who took the shot, waiting for muzzle flash, ready to return fire. That meant the real shooter was somewhere with line of sight to Kat's previous positions. The fallen tree, the destroyed bunker, the general area where Kat had been operating. Kat brought her rifle back up. But instead of looking at the palm tree, she began scanning the surrounding trees. Methodically, left to right, top to bottom, checked every tree within 300 yards of the palm. It took 11 minutes. At 0828, she found the real threat. Banyan tree 80 yards northwest of the palm, 91 feet up. The Japanese sniper was positioned in a perfect hide. Branches and vines concealed him from 3 sides. Only a narrow gap where he could observe and shoot. He had a clear line of sight to Kat's previous position at the fallen tree. He was waiting, watching, waiting for Kat to appear at the fallen tree or waiting for her to take a shot at the bait in the palm. Kat studied him through her scope. She could barely see him, just a dark shape in deep shadow. But he was there. She had 2 problems. First, the real sniper was watching the wrong location. If Kat fired at him now, the sound would reveal her actual position, the rocks, not the fallen tree. He'd know immediately where she was. He'd relocate before she could work the bolt and chamber another round. She'd lose him. Second, if Kat did nothing, the sniper would eventually realize she wasn't at the fallen tree. He'd begin searching for her, scanning the area, and from 91 feet up with a scoped rifle, he'd find her. Kat made her decision. She would use their bait against them. She aimed at the decoy sniper in the palm tree, range 190 yards. She'd already made her adjustments earlier. Crosshairs on center mass. She fired. The Winchester kicked. Through the scope, Kat saw the decoy sniper jerk. His body fell forward out of the palm tree. tumbled 40 feet down. Immediately, no hesitation, Kat swung her rifle toward the banyan tree, 91 feet up, 80 yards northwest. The real sniper would react to the shot. He'd hear it, recognize it wasn't coming from the fallen tree. He'd turn toward the actual sound. That turn would create movement. Kat saw it through her scope. A slight shift in the dark shape. The sniper was repositioning, turning to face Kat's location at the rocks. Raising his rifle, Kat put her crosshairs on the shape. Didn't have time for perfect aim. Just center mass. Best guess. Fired before he could fully turn. The Winchester kicked again. Through the scope, Kat saw the real sniper fall. His body tumbled out of the banyan. His Arisaka rifle fell separately, tumbling end over end. Both hit the jungle floor within seconds of each other. 2 shots, 2 kills, numbers 9 and 10. 10 Japanese snipers dead, 1 remaining. But Kat had revealed her position to anyone else watching. 2 shots from the same location. The sound would carry. Anyone within 500 yards would know exactly where she was. Kat grabbed her rifle, didn't bother reloading, just grabbed it and ran. Moved east along the rock line. 40 yards, dropped into a drainage ditch. At 0834, 6 seconds after Kat left the rocks, Japanese machine gun fire raked her previous position. Type 92 heavy machine gun. 7.7 millimeter. 450 rounds per minute. The bullets kicked up rock fragments and dust, chewed through vegetation, destroyed anything in their path. The fire lasted 17 seconds, roughly 130 rounds, enough to kill everything within a 20-foot radius of where Kat had been. Kat pressed herself into the drainage ditch. Listened to the machine gun tear apart her position, felt the ground shake from impacts, smelled the cordite and dust. When the firing stopped, she counted to 60, gave the gunner time to relocate or observe. Then she moved again. East, 100 yards, to a shell crater partially filled with rainwater. Kat waded into the crater. The water was cold, muddy. It came up to her chest. She settled into it, rested the Winchester on the crater rim. Let the water cool her body temperature. She was sweating from exertion and fear. She glassed the trees through her scope. 10 confirmed kills, 1 remaining. The 11th sniper would be the best, the smartest, the most experienced. He'd watched 10 of his comrades die over 3 days. He knew Kat's tactics. He knew her rifle. He knew her capabilities. He knew her approximate location. And somewhere in that jungle, he was planning. Kat waited, controlled her breathing, slowed her heart rate, became part of the environment. Just another shape in the water, another piece of the crater. At 0947, Kat realized her mistake. The 11th sniper was not in the trees. Kat saw the movement at the edge of her peripheral vision. 60 yards south, low to the ground. Just a shift in the vegetation pattern. A fern moving against the wind direction. She kept her rifle pointed forward but shifted her eyes south, watched without moving her head. The movement came again, closer this time. 50 yards, a shape crawling through the undergrowth, using ferns, vines, and fallen branches for cover, moving slow, deliberate. The Japanese sniper was on the ground, and he was moving toward Kat's last known position, the rocks. Kat remained motionless in the water. The Winchester was already against her shoulder. She was already in shooting position. But the angle was wrong. The crater rim blocked her view of the approaching sniper. To get a clear shot, she'd have to rise up, expose herself. The sniper stopped moving at 0952. He'd reached a position 40 yards from the rocks. Kat couldn't see him anymore. He was hidden behind vegetation. But she knew he was there, studying the rocks, searching for movement, searching for her. Kat waited. This was the ultimate test of patience. The ability to remain still when every instinct screamed to move, to shoot, to act. She counted seconds in her head, controlled her breathing, kept her eyes on the vegetation where she'd last seen movement. At 0958, the sniper moved again. Kat saw the ferns shift, 35 yards from the rocks, 30 yards, 25 yards. He was approaching from the south side, the side Kat had used when she evacuated under machine gun fire. He'd watched that attack, knew she'd moved east from the rocks. He was working his way along her most likely escape route, hunting Kat the way she'd been hunting him. At Talon 3, the Japanese sniper reached the rocks. Kat watched him move into the machine gun nest, watched him take up a position facing east, toward the drainage ditch, toward the area where Kat should have been hiding. He was 38 yards from Kat's actual position in the water-filled crater, but facing the wrong direction, his back exposed. Kat had a clear shot, center mass, 38 yards, easy range, even easier than her competition shots at Camp Perry. But she didn't take it. She waited, watched, because something was wrong. This sniper had survived 10 days of American operations in Point Cruz. He'd outlived 10 other snipers, men who had died because they made mistakes. This man would not make mistakes. The position in the rocks was too exposed, too vulnerable. No experienced sniper would remain there for more than a few seconds. It was a good observation point. He could see the drainage ditch, the tree line, the approaches. But it offered no overhead cover, no escape route, no depth. This was another bait position. Kat kept her scope on the sniper in the rocks, but she expanded her awareness to the surrounding area. If this was bait, the real threat would be positioned to cover it, somewhere with line of sight to anyone who took the shot. At 1006, Kat found him, a second Japanese soldier, 70 yards northwest of the rocks, behind a fallen tree trunk. Not moving, not repositioning, just watching, waiting. His rifle aimed toward the drainage ditch where Kat should have been. Two men, not one. The 11th sniper had brought support, or these were the final two snipers, numbers 11 and 12, working together. Kat's mathematics had been right. Not 11 snipers, 12, 6 pairs. Kat faced an impossible tactical problem. She could not shoot both men before they reacted. The bolt-action Winchester required her to work the action between shots, extract the spent cartridge, chamber a fresh round, reacquire the target, fire again. That sequence took roughly 3 seconds with Kat's training. In 3 seconds, a trained soldier could locate a threat and return fire. 2 trained soldiers could bracket her position and kill her with concentrated fire. Kat needed a different approach. She slowly, very slowly lowered herself deeper into the water, submerged until only her eyes and the top of her head remained above the surface. She kept the Winchester pointed skyward to keep water out of the barrel, controlled her breathing through her nose, remained motionless, waited. At 10:13, the Japanese soldier in the rocks stood up. He'd spent 10 minutes watching the drainage ditch, seen nothing. No movement, no sound. He believed Kat had moved farther east. He turned, signaled to his partner behind the fallen tree. A hand gesture Kat couldn't quite see from her angle, but the meaning was clear. Let's move. Both men began moving east, parallel to each other 70 yards apart, executing a 2-man sweep, planning to flush Kat out or find her position. Kat remained in the water, motionless. Her heart rate was elevated 80 beats per minute, higher than she preferred, but controlled. The 2 Japanese soldiers moved past her crater. They were walking now, not crawling, confident, moving with purpose. They were between Kat and the tree line, their backs exposed to her position. Kat rose from the water, slowly, silently. Water dripped from the Winchester's barrel, from her uniform, from her face and hair. She brought the rifle to her shoulder, settled the stock, put her eye to the scope. The closer soldier, the one who'd been in the rocks, was now 42 yards away, moving east, his back to Kat. Kat centered her crosshairs between his shoulder blades, center mass from behind. The bullet would penetrate his spine, his lungs, his heart. Instant incapacitation. She fired. The Winchester kicked. The soldier dropped, fell forward, didn't move. Kat worked the bolt. The spent cartridge ejected. She chambered another round, swung the rifle toward the second soldier behind the fallen tree. He was turning, had heard the shot, was raising his rifle, searching for the source. Kat put her crosshairs on him, didn't have time for precision, just center mass, fired. The second soldier fell, his rifle clattered to the ground. Both men down, both motionless. Third round chambered. Kat kept her scope moving, scanning, searching for additional threats. No movement, no shots, no sound except the ringing in her ears from gunfire. 11 shots fired over 3 days. 11 Japanese snipers dead. But as Kat climbed out of the crater, rifle in hand, she heard something that made her freeze. Voices, Japanese voices, multiple men coming from the tree line toward the two fallen soldiers. Kat had killed the snipers, but the snipers had not been working alone. Kat dropped back into the crater. The water was cold, muddy. It closed over her head as she submerged completely. She held her breath, kept the Winchester vertical above the water barrel pointed at the sky. The voices grew louder. Japanese. At least 6 men, maybe more. Infantry patrol or recovery teams sent to collect the bodies of the dead snipers. Kat surfaced slightly, just enough to breathe through her nose. Her eyes stayed above water. She watched. At 10:28, the voices stopped at the location of the first body, 42 yards from Kat's crater. She could hear them clearly now. Urgent tones, rapid conversation. Then the voices moved to the second body behind the fallen tree. More conversation, then silence. Then the voices began moving again. Not back toward the tree line, toward Kat's crater. They'd found her tracks, boot prints in the mud leading from the rocks to the crater. Kat had been careful about noise and movement. She had not been careful about tracks. Kat counted her ammunition. 5 rounds in the Winchester. She'd reloaded from a stripper clip after killing the 2 snipers. 6 Japanese soldiers minimum based on the number of voices. Poor odds for a bolt-action rifle against multiple targets with semi-automatic weapons. The voices grew closer. 30 yards, 25 yards, 20 yards. Kat's training said to stay hidden, stay submerged, let them pass by. A nurse with a rifle against 6 infantry was suicide. But Kat's instinct said otherwise. If they found her in the water trapped in the crater, she was dead. Better to fight from surprise than from disadvantage. At 10:31, a Japanese soldier appeared at the crater rim, looking down, directly at Kat. Their eyes met. Kat fired from the water. The Winchester's barrel was 2 feet underwater. The shot was muffled. Water sprayed. The bullet still found its target. The soldier fell backwards, shot through the chest. She cycled the bolt. Underwater resistance from water made it harder. She surfaced, chambered another round. 2 more soldiers appeared at the crater rim. Kat fired. Worked the bolt. Fired again. Both soldiers dropped. 3 rounds left in her Winchester. Kat could hear shouting. More soldiers approaching. She climbed out of the crater on the north side away from the voices. Ran 20 yards. Dropped behind a fallen tree. Japanese rifle fire cracked through the jungle. Type 99 rifles. 7.7 millimeter. The bullets struck the ground around the crater, around the fallen tree. The soldiers were firing at movement, at sound, not at confirmed targets. Suppressive fire. Kat stayed low, brought her rifle up, glassed the area through her scope, saw movement. 2 soldiers advancing toward the crater, 50 yards out, moving cautiously, using cover. Kat aimed at the lead soldier. Center mass. Range 50 yards. She fired. The soldier dropped. The second soldier dove for cover behind a tree, disappeared from sight. 2 rounds left in Kat's Winchester. She could hear more voices behind her. The Japanese were flanking. One group from the south, another from the east. They were surrounding her position. Kat made her decision. She could not win this firefight. Bolt-action rifle against multiple soldiers with semi-automatic weapons. No cover, no support. She needed to break contact, disengage, get back to American lines. She grabbed her rifle, left her ammunition pouches too heavy, would slow her, ran north into the jungle. Full sprint. Vines caught her boots. She stumbled, caught herself. Branches whipped her face, drew blood. Japanese rifle fire cracked behind her. Bullets snapped past her head, supersonic cracks that meant near misses. A vine wrapped her ankle. Kat went down hard, face first into mud. The Winchester flew from her hands. Voices behind her, closer, shouting in Japanese. Kat grabbed the rifle. Mud caked the barrel, the action, the scope. No time to clean it. She pushed herself up, kept running. Her lungs burned, legs screamed. She'd been running on adrenaline for 4 days. Now her body was giving out. Ahead a stream. Kat plunged in. The water was chest-deep cold. She waded across boots, finding purchase on slippery rocks. Behind her, the voices stopped at the stream bank. Kat didn't look back. She climbed the far side, grabbed a tree root, pulled herself up the muddy slope. More rifle fire. Bullets kicked up mud around her. One struck a tree trunk inches from her head, spraying bark fragments. Kat threw herself over the top of the slope, rolled, came up running. The voices faded. The Japanese weren't pursuing aggressively. They'd found their dead. That was enough. Kat ran another 200 yards before collapsing into a shell crater. Her vision swam, black spots at the edges. She was hyperventilating. She forced herself to slow her breathing. Combat breathing harder than competition breathing. Fear and exhaustion made control nearly impossible. 60 seconds. The black spots faded. Her vision cleared. Kat listened. No voices, no movement. Just the jungle sounds, returning birds, insects, the distant rumble of artillery. She checked her rifle. Mud everywhere. The action was gummed up. She worked the bolt slowly. It moved, but with resistance. 2 rounds left. And a rifle that might jam if she tried to fire it. 2 rounds left. She'd used her last stripper clip after killing the 2 snipers. The rest of her ammunition, 40 rounds in pouches, was back at the rocks, where she'd grabbed only the Winchester before running from the machine gun fire. Kat waited 5 minutes. Let her breathing calm. Let her heart rate come down. Listened for pursuit. Heard nothing. At 10:47, she began moving northeast, not running now, walking, staying low, using the terrain for cover, avoiding open areas. The jungle was thick, triple canopy vegetation. She had to push through ferns and vines. Her uniform was soaked, heavy. Her boots were caked with mud. Every step took effort. At 11:13, Kat reached the American perimeter. A Marine sentry challenged her from behind a fallen log. Halt, identify. Kat raised her hands. Kept her rifle visible but non-threatening. Lieutenant Sarah Catherine Morrison, 132nd Infantry Regiment. The sentry stood, saw her soaked, muddy, bleeding from branch cuts across her face and neck, her uniform torn, her eyes hollow from exhaustion and adrenaline. Jesus, ma'am, you look like hell. What happened? I need to see Colonel Drake, now. The sentry called for his sergeant, Sergeant Miller, Marine who'd been on Guadalcanal since August. He took one look at Kat and grabbed his radio. This is Miller at checkpoint 7. I have Lieutenant Morrison from the 132nd. She needs immediate escort to Battalion HQ. She's wounded. Over. I'm not wounded, Kat said. Just cuts. I can walk. Miller studied her. With respect, ma'am, you're bleeding from your face and you're shaking. Kat looked at her hands. He was right. They were shaking. Adrenaline dump. Post-combat stress response. She'd been running on pure survival instinct. Now that she was safe, her body was reacting. I can walk, she repeated. Miller assigned 2 Marines to escort her. They moved through the perimeter to battalion headquarters. Other soldiers stopped to watch. Word spread fast. That's Morrison, the nurse with the civilian rifle. She's been out there for 3 days. Heard she got 11 snipers. At 11:30, Kat entered battalion headquarters. Colonel Drake was there, Captain Morris, and another officer Kat didn't recognize, older, more weathered. Stars on his collar. A general. Drake spoke first. Morrison, report. Kat stood at attention, dripping water and mud on the tent floor. She kept her voice steady, professional. 11 Japanese snipers eliminated over 4 days, sir. 12 rounds fired against the snipers specifically. 11 hits, 1 miss on a moving target at 340 yards. Additionally, engagement with Japanese infantry recovery team. 3 confirmed kills with rifle. 5 total rounds expended in that engagement. 2 rounds remaining in weapon. Drake made notes. Range of sniper engagements. 190 yards to 315 yards. All elevated targets between 40 feet and 94 feet. Ammunition status. 2 rounds remaining as stated, sir. I left my ammunition pouches at the engagement site when I disengaged. The rifle, Kat glanced at her Winchester. Functional, needs cleaning. Barrel was submerged during final engagement. Bore should be cleared and inspected. Long silence. The General Kat still didn't know his name, studied her, then spoke for the first time. Lieutenant Morrison, I'm Brigadier General Edmund Sabri. I command the 182nd Regiment. I've been following your actions over the past 4 days. Colonel Drake has kept me informed. Kat said nothing, waited. Sabri continued. When Colonel Drake first told me he was sending a nurse with a civilian hunting rifle to counter Japanese snipers, I thought he'd lost his mind. I considered relieving him of command. Drake shifted slightly but said nothing. But I gave him 24 hours, one day to prove the concept. If you failed, I was prepared to court-martial both of you for wasting resources and endangering personnel. Kat's stomach tightened. That was 4 days ago. In those 4 days, you eliminated 11 trained military snipers. You did what 6 designated marksmen could not do. You did what an entire platoon of infantry could not do. You stopped a threat that had killed 14 Americans and demoralized an entire battalion. Sabri paused. More importantly, you did it with a rifle that every officer in this regiment mocked. A rifle they called a toy. A mail-order sweetheart. A hunting rifle with a civilian scope. He looked at Drake. Colonel, I owe you an apology. I was wrong. Lieutenant Morrison has proven that sometimes unconventional solutions work where conventional ones fail. Drake nodded. Thank you, sir. Sabri turned back to Kat. Morrison, as of this moment, you are relieved of sniper operations. You've done your The threat is eliminated. Return to your duties as a combat nurse. We need you keeping men alive, not killing the enemy. Kat felt relief and disappointment simultaneously. Relief that she wouldn't have to go back out there. Disappointment that it was over. Yes, sir. Sabri wasn't finished. However, I have a question for you. Can you train others to do what you did? Kat considered. Yes, sir, but it requires specific conditions. Time for training, rifles with optics, and soldiers who already have strong fundamentals, breathing control, trigger discipline, the ability to estimate range, and compensate for wind. How many men would you need? 40 to start, sir. I could evaluate them and select maybe 30 who have the aptitude. Pair them into 2-man teams. 15 teams total. Sabri nodded. We have 14 Springfield rifles with inertial scopes. 8 power magnification. Left behind by Marine sniper teams who rotated out. We have 43 soldiers in the regiment with expert marksmanship badges. I'm assigning them to you. You have 1 week to train them. Then we'll evaluate their performance in the field. Kat's mind raced. Training snipers. Creating a program. Sir, I accept. But I have one condition. Sabri raised an eyebrow. A condition? Yes, sir. I keep my Winchester Model 70. I don't give it up for a Springfield. Sabri looked at the rifle. Muddy scratched the stock mark from hard use, but functional, proven. Granted, that Winchester killed 11 enemy snipers in 4 days. It's earned its place. Thank you, sir. Kat spent the rest of January 22nd cleaning her rifle. Field stripped it completely. Removed the bolt, removed the scope, cleaned every component. The barrel had been submerged in muddy water. She ran patches through it for an hour. Bronze brush, cleaning solvent, more patches. Finally, gun oil. She didn't stop until patches came out perfectly white. The scope lenses had mud on them. She cleaned them carefully with lens paper and rubbing alcohol. Checked the reticle still aligned. The scope had survived 3 days of hard use and complete submersion. The Lyman Alaskan was tough. She reassembled everything. Cycled the action, dry-fired several times to test the trigger. Everything worked. That night, Kat slept for 12 hours straight. The first real sleep since January 19th. Training began on January 27th, 1943. Kat had 40 soldiers assembled at a makeshift range 2 miles east of Henderson Field. All men, all with expert marksmanship badges from pre-war or training qualifications. Kat stood in front of them, 27 years old, 5'6", 130 pounds, cuts on her face still healing from branch strikes. The Winchester Model 70 slung over her shoulder. The men looked skeptical. Kat understood. A woman teaching them to shoot, a nurse teaching them to kill. It didn't fit their worldview. Kat didn't explain, didn't justify, just started teaching. Sniping is 90% patience, 9% fieldcraft, 1% shooting. If you think this is about marksmanship, you're wrong. It's about being able to sit motionless for 6 hours while mosquitoes eat you alive. It's about controlling your breathing when your heart is pounding from fear. It's about making one perfect shot when everything depends on it. She spent the first day on fundamentals. Breathing control, 4 seconds inhale, 2 seconds hold, 4 seconds exhale, trigger squeeze, slow, steady pressure. The rifle surprises you when it fires. Wind, reading, watch the vegetation, feel the air on your face, estimate speed, range estimation. If you don't know the exact range, you miss. The Springfield rifles weighed 11 pounds with the unertl scopes. Heavier than Cat's Winchester. Heavier than the M1 Garand. The weight made them stable but tiring to hold for extended periods. Cat taught them to use any available support. Rocks, logs, sandbags, their own packs. The jungle rarely offered perfect shooting positions. Snipers had to create stable platforms from whatever was available. By January 30th, 32 of the original 40 could consistently hit man-sized targets at 300 yards under field conditions. Cat divided them into 16 two-man teams. Shooter and spotter. The spotter's job: locate targets using binoculars. Provide security while the shooter engaged. Call corrections if the shooter missed. And carry an M1 Garand for close defense. After each mission, the roles could switch. This kept both men proficient and prevented single points of failure. On February 1st, Cat took 4 teams into the field. Their mission cleared Japanese positions west of the Matanakau River. Intelligence indicated small groups of Japanese soldiers, stragglers, who hadn't evacuated with the main force. The teams moved into position at dawn. Cat paired with Corporal Daniel Hayes as her spotter. They set up on high ground overlooking a trail the Japanese had been using. At 07:20, a Japanese soldier appeared on the trail. 200 yards out, Hayes confirmed the target through binoculars. Single male, Japanese uniform, rifle, heading west. Cat made her adjustments. Range 200 yards. Slight breeze from the east. She fired. The Winchester kicked. The soldier dropped. Over the next 6 hours, Cat's team engaged 7 more Japanese soldiers on that trail. 7 shots, 6 kills, 1 miss due to wind shift. The other 3 teams reported similar results. Combined 23 Japanese soldiers killed that day. 0 American casualties. The sniper section continued operations through early February. By February 9th, the section had 74 confirmed kills. On February 5th, Cat observed from high ground as Private First Class Robert Chen made his first kill. 19 years old, San Francisco. His spotter called the range 280 yards, wind from east 4 miles per hour. Chen's hands shook as he adjusted his scope. Cat watched through binoculars. She knew that shake. Her own hands had trembled after her first kill. Chen fired. The target dropped. He lowered his rifle, turned to his spotter with wide eyes. Not celebration, just shock. The weight of taking a life. Cat climbed down to their position. At ease, Private. Good shot. Thank you, ma'am. His voice hollow. Cat understood. It doesn't get easier, Chen. That's humanity, not weakness. You did your job. The man you killed would have killed Americans. Remember that. Chen nodded slowly. By February 9th, Chen had 5 confirmed kills. He'd learned to carry the weight. All 32 of Cat's students learned. 74 enemy soldiers killed. 0 American casualties. Cat had created something that would outlast the war. Conservative count. Only bodies that could be observed and verified. On February 7th, Cat was shot. She was operating near the Tenamba River when a Japanese rifleman hit her. The bullet struck her left shoulder. Not a sniper, just an infantryman with good luck or good aim. The impact spun Cat around and knocked her down. Hayes dragged her on her to cover, called for a corpsman. The wound was serious but not fatal. The bullet had passed through muscle without hitting bone or major blood vessels. Cat was evacuated to the field hospital near Henderson Field. Doctors cleaned the wound, sutured it closed, told her she'd recover but needed rest. No combat operations for at least 3 weeks. Cat argued. They sedated her. While Cat recovered, the Japanese completed their evacuation of Guadalcanal. On February 9th, American forces reached Cape Esperance on the western tip of the island. Found it empty. The campaign was over. Cat's sniper section had operated for 12 days. 74 confirmed kills. 0 friendly casualties during sniper operations. The section was officially recognized by division headquarters. General Sabri recommended Cat for a Bronze Star. The citation read, "For meritorious service in connection with military operations against the enemy." Lieutenant Morrison displayed exceptional skill and courage in eliminating enemy sniper threats and in training personnel in counter-sniper operations. March 1943. Kat was released from the field hospital. Her shoulder had healed enough for light duty. Orders came through from Pacific Command. The Army needed experienced combat officers for a new mission. Burma, something classified. Kat volunteered. By late March, she was on a transport ship heading west across the Pacific. Her Winchester Model 70 was packed in a waterproof case in the cargo hold. The Lyman Alaskan scope wrapped in oilcloth. The mission would take Kat through 700 miles of jungle in Burma. 3 months. The Winchester made 7 kills, different terrain, closer ranges, fewer opportunities for the precision shooting that had defined Guadalcanal. Burma taught Kat that sniping wasn't always about the shot. Sometimes it was about not shooting, about restraint, about knowing when a single shot would compromise an entire mission. By June 1944, Kat was stateside, training duty at Fort Benning, Georgia. The Winchester went into a footlocker. The war continued without her. Kat never spoke about Point Cruz after the war. Colleagues at Princeton knew she'd served. They didn't know about the 11 snipers. Didn't know about the water-filled crater, the mortar attack, the moment when a Japanese soldier looked down at her and she fired from underwater. In 1965, a veteran found her at a State Department reception. Lieutenant Morrison from the 132nd Infantry. She nodded. He gripped her hand. My brother was in L Company. Point Cruz, January 43. He wrote home about the nurse with the Winchester who stopped the snipers. Said you saved his life. He paused. He died in the Philippines, but he lived long enough because of you. After he left, Kat went home, opened the case where she kept her Olympic medal, her state championship trophy, and the Bronze Star. She'd proven herself, proven that skill mattered more than permission, that competence trumped skepticism. But 11 lives taken, even enemy lives, even necessary kills stayed with her. She still heard on quiet nights the sound of bodies falling through branches, the distant thump of impact. She'd done her duty, saved American lives, changed how the military thought about women in combat. But she'd never call it easy, never call it clean. Some costs don't show up on after-action reports. The Winchester Model 70 that killed 11 Japanese snipers in 4 days now sits in the National Firearms Museum in Fairfax, Virginia. Display case number 47. Most visitors walk past without stopping. It looks like any vintage hunting rifle. Woodstock, blued steel, a scope that seems primitive by modern standards. But it's not just any rifle. It's the rifle that proved a woman with a civilian weapon could outshoot 11 military-trained snipers. The rifle that changed how the American military thought about women in combat roles. The rifle that demonstrated individual skill and precision could overcome institutional skepticism. They called it a mail-order toy, a hunting rifle, a nurse's sweetheart. Lieutenant Sarah Catherine Morrison called it the Winchester Protocol, a reminder that sometimes the best solution isn't the standard one, that sometimes unconventional approaches work where conventional ones fail, that sometimes a 27-year-old nurse with an Olympic silver medal and a rifle she bought with 2 years of saved pay can do what an entire battalion cannot. She never apologized for carrying that rifle into combat. She never apologized for proving everyone wrong. And 70 years later, that rifle sits in a museum as a reminder. Never underestimate competence. Never underestimate determination. And never underestimate a woman with a rifle she bought herself.